Today we're going to generate some random mazes, just like this one. But let's start at the beginning with an empty grid. And in code we're going to create 4 classes. First is our cell, with a boolean for each direction. Second, we have a maze class with a 2D array of cells. Third is our cell pointer, that points to a cell in our array. And finally a cell offset, which locates one cell relative to another. Okay, back to the maze. And the idea is that we start in a random location and move randomly, with the only rule being that we can't move somewhere we've already been. Eventually we get to a dead end, but we'll get back to this later. Back to the code, and we're going to start by adding a new property to each cell to mark if it's been visited. And then in our maze class, we'll add a list just to track the current path, and an integer to track how many cells there are left to visit, and finally a random number generator. Now for the real work, and we'll start with a method called start. All it does is pick a random cell, add it to the path, mark it as visited, and decrement the unvisited count. Then we'll create a help method called possible moves, which lists all the possible moves from a given cell and returns them as cell offsets. We'll start in the X direction, and we can go either back or forward. Then we check if it's outside the bounds of our array and continue if it is. And if it's already been visited, then we continue then too. And then do exactly the same in the Y direction. Then we have all possible moves we can make from a given cell. We also need a method that links 2 cells together. Unsurprisingly, this is called link cells. It's pretty simple. If one X is smaller than the other, link it east, otherwise link it west, and do the same with the Y. Right, finally we need a method called next, which is responsible for figuring out the next step in the maze. We get the current cell, which is just the last one in the path. Then we get all the possible moves for it. We pick one at random and then apply it to the current cell to get to the new cell. Then all that's left is to add it to the current path and link it. And then mark it as visited and decrement the unvisited count. Okay, back to the maze, and we're stuck in a corner with nowhere to go. When this happens, we traverse back along the path until we find a cell we can move to. And in code this is super easy. So remember our next function, let's just modify it so if we don't have any possible moves, then we simply remove the cell from our path, and that's it. Okay, now we have our start and next methods, let's pop them in the constructor, and we're done.